Welcome to Revive Ministries Podcast. This month's theme is One More Day. Today in this recording is September 10th, which is actually World Suicide Prevention Day. I want to just caveat and I took some time thinking about the word recovery and where it kind of roots from. It roots from Middle English. And I do like what it kind of represents, especially there's two kind of meanings when it comes to recovery, and it has a meaning that suggests to regaining something or someone or to obtain something that was previously lost. Today we have a new guest, Blanca Rodriguez. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insight and being part of the conversation.
Thank you so much, Robert, for having me here, especially a day like today that we are really being reminiscent of such an important day that cannot be passed by, definitely, which is World Suicide Prevention Day. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
No problem. And I think I, in essence, when World Suicide Day, they always have a theme, and I think it's to paraphrase, it's changing the narrative when we think about the word suicide and how it affects families and people around the world. I want to put a disclaimer. If you are in crisis in the United States, 988 is a suicide crisis lifeline. However, this month I have been trying to give other. I know people are listening from other parts of the world, so these are some suicide hotlines from India, Indonesia, and then we're talking about other countries like Japan, Jordan, Kenya. I just want to shed light that obviously this is a global issue, a global topic, a global part of our lives. Unfortunately, that in this society that we are affected, no matter where we're at. There's no one that's kind of protected in this way. Doesn't matter what social economic status you are. Everyone can be impacted. I'm actually half South Korean, half Puerto Rican. On my South Korean side, South Korea is actually, unfortunately, on the top of the list when it comes to suicides, and then just shed light there. But I do understand that wherever you are, whatever you think you cannot do, I think as adults, the hardest thing for us to ask is, "I need help."
That's right.
For us,
So
it kind
true.
of humbles us. I say that people say it better than people say better than me, Blanca. So I'm going to start off with a few quotes, certain ideas, and kind of see where we roll with it. Okay. Um,
Absolutely.
Anonymous, I guess, speaker said, "I'm bent but not broken. I'm scarred but not disfigured. I'm sad but not hopeless. I'm tired but not powerless. I'm angry but not bitter. I'm depressed but not giving up." What comes to mind when you hear this quote? Anything ring bell personally, or anything that you want to share with those listening?
Oh, definitely. All of it
Mhm. Yeah.
resonates with parts and seasons of my life. That is
Mhm.
for sure. I'm bent but not broken. I'm scarred but not disfigured. Definitely that takes me all the way back to my childhood. I am Puerto Rican, from Puerto Rican parents. I was born in New York City. This was the era from the ending of the 1950s, beginning of the 1960s. There was a lot of exodus of Puerto Rican to the United States in search for the American dream.
Mhm.
So my parents, of course, they moved to the US searching for the American dream. My father, he definitely was pretty successful at accomplishing the American dream. He had businesses until tragedy struck.
Mhm.
Tragedy struck. My father's life was taken in an armed robbery, going terribly wrong in his jewelry store, and life was never the same
Mhm.
again. And I was not only bent, I was broken, scarred, sad, hopeless. I mean, I was 8 years old when I lost my father.
Mhm.
And definitely from there, it was a downhill spiral to a Pandora's box being open, which was chronic, untreated mental illness. And
Mm.
my mother, when she, of course, lost my beloved father, she went into a deep depression that she never recovered from it. But this is the era of shh, you don't talk about the dead. Shh, you don't talk about mental health. You don't talk about mental illnesses, because it meant in that era, it meant that it will be kind of the end of your life.
Mhm.
You're useless in this life, and that was the way it was back in those days. I grew up around this, and
Mm.
all I saw was chronic untreated mental illnesses with my mother and aunts and uncles, and then other uncles and aunts, they had chronic mental illnesses. They were supposedly treated, but they
Mm.
were given the same pill for every single condition that there was, which meant horse tranquilizer. They were either zombies or they were
Mhm.
either in crisis.
Mhm.
And after that, I had cousins that they committed suicide because of chronic untreated mental illnesses. Lots of loss, lots of confusion, lots of instability, lots of crisis, one after the other, the other. So I grew up around that, not being able to mourn or grieve the loss of my father. I had
Mm.
no support. I felt isolated, abandoned, neglected, because we were in the era of you don't talk about the dead, or she's a little girl, she doesn't know what's going on. And
Mhm.
that definitely paved the way for traumatic childhood. And I had childhood trauma, oh my god, since ever since my father died. I
Mhm.
had childhood trauma, and then a year after that I was sexually assaulted for the first time, so that added up to the childhood trauma. I was in shame, I was in fear, I thought I was responsible for what was happening. Why am I not being heard? My voice was never heard. I
Yeah.
felt like I was not worthy of anybody's time. So when I read, I am bent, I am
Mm.
scarred, I am sad, I am angry, I am
Mm.
depressed, absolutely. All of those, yes, I went through all of them, but here we go. I'm not disfigured. I'm not
Mm.
hopeless. I'm
Mm.
not powerless. And of course, I'm not giving up. And not giving up is definitely one of those pillars that, ironically, my mother was the one who paved the way for not giving up.
Mm.
Because even though she had her mental illness really, really taking the best of her, she had these moments when she would shine with her own light. And she would teach us fantastic things that I took for the rest of my life, like we keep on going. Don't you give up. You got to keep on going. And that really helped me throughout my
Mm.
life all the way till now. But definitely this phrase right here definitely describes me in full detail
Mm.
all along, from the moment I was 8 years old all the way to full blown adult right now that I'm 58 years old. So it's very profound and it's very true. And a lot of people are going through this right here, right now.
Yeah, I love how you kind of expanded it, the idea, the seasons of life that we go through, and
Hmm.
I just, I do appreciate you sharing also the cultural aspect. I'm
Hmm.
kind of lost in like the Hispanic and the Asian culture, and
That's
it
right.
wasn't just hush because the time, but also hush because we're minorities. We cannot really say
Exactly.
this. It is going to weaken us. So I
Hmm.
totally understand that, but through, like you mentioned, light, and that you it's where you recognize the damage, but you had this perseverance to keep going, and those lessons, just because someone's struggling doesn't mean you can't learn from them. I feel like a lot of people have great wisdom, maybe parts of it, maybe some of it they're doing really well, and
Yeah.
that's why I always kind of feel like we are doing a big disservice if we're not kind of sharing. Now,
Hmm.
in regards to, I think that one of the hardest things, especially when I was going through what I was going through, and is how it's hard to swallow the pill that no one will truly understand what you're going through. There was a moment, I'm sure, when you're really going through, you're getting the medication. Medication's one aspect, and it's not everything, but it's definitely an
Mhm.
important one to start off, especially when you're trying to get stabilized. However, working in the mental health field now, I ask the question to my clients, are you allowed to get better? It kind of gets deeper as you think about it more, because you got
Absolutely.
to because you kind of have to ask yourself what is blocking this maybe progress. And some of it is, a lot of it is yourself. A lot of it is
Mhm.
yourself saying, all this should have, could have, why can't this? And not to say they're not justified, but just like this, what we're reading right here, it's adapting to change, it's the understanding. But as we shed light to suicide, and I want to just kind of caveat, I love what, when I was in school, I read John Steinbeck books, if we remember them. But this quote really speaks to me. I added this, I was thinking about it today, obviously suicide, World Suicide Day, but it's much darker when the light goes out than what it would have been if it have never shone. To like
Mhm.
shine. So the idea is like a lot of the kind of negative thoughts when someone's maybe contemplating suicide is that I wish I never was born. You know
Mhm.
that. However, the darkness is going to be more contrasting when that person is no longer there. So I do again segue again, just to not to minimize what's going out there. I know it's hard to find resources. I know it's hard to find help, but I do encourage you to whatever it is. It's your church,
Mhm.
if it's your friend that you see, or even just someone at work, just ask them that, hey, I am really struggling. Can you help me? I'm like, and whatever resources that is, I don't like to assume like if church is something that was harmful or something that you experienced that was negative, then find someone that can help you, whether it's a support group, whatever that looks like. Anything you want to share about this quote before we keep going?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And since we are going into this very, very important, profound conversation,
Mm,
I have a daughter. My daughter is 23 years old. She is a biomedical engineer.
mhm,
She's got all of her life ahead of herself. But my daughter has depression.
mm,
She has general anxiety depression, and she has had, in the middle of the pandemic, she got into college when the pandemic hit. She
mhm,
felt isolated. She was alone. She was in a very, very difficult situation. And my daughter, I knew that she was struggling before with some feelings, but never as severe as when the pandemic hit. She went through most of her college life with the pandemic here. And
mm,
it was very difficult on her. It took such a toll on her that she went into very dark moments when the walls were closing in and closing in and closing in, and she felt like she had no direction, nowhere to go, no one to help her. And she told me, because this is the beauty of embracing change. When I grew up, mental health and mental illness was never discussed. It was never discussed
mm,
openly. There was never no support. The only support that these patients will have was a doctor, a pill, go home, and good luck with
mhm,
whatever else you do in your life. Nowadays, we're fast forwarding 50 years later.
mm,
Things are much better. There is much more openness. There's much more embracing the situation. There was much more support.
mm,
And I'm telling you and everybody out there is support. Don't do it alone. So
mm,
my daughter, she told me very openly that she went to the ninth floor of a parking lot in the middle of Atlanta, and she was going to jump.
mm,
And an angel from heaven above, I don't know this
mhm,
person's name, but God bless you wherever you
mhm,
are, called her in
mm,
the middle of her being in this very dark moment in her life, when she was just going to end it all. And a phone call came in, and she is still here today, thanks
mm,
to that person that made a phone call, that called her to either check on her or whatever the case it was. But that phone call stopped her finishing everything. And
Mm.
she was only 20 years old. Now she's
Yeah.
23. And she, thank goodness, thank God, every single day, I'm thankful for her presence in my life, for being here still. And
Mm.
I celebrate her tremendously. And I'm very grateful that my daughter and I, we have this very open relationship about her mental illness, because it has helped her tremendously on not feeling alone,
Mm.
not feeling supported, feeling loved, no matter what the case may be. And she is in treatment right now. And yes, she does medication. She doesn't go without her medication, but she is exploring other options as well that are helping her tremendously in a holistic way
Mm.
to deal with the day-to-day life, because we all have our ups and downs in this life. Nobody can
Mm.
deny that. We have dark seasons in our lives. All of us have dark seasons in our life. That's what we call the winter seasons in our
Mm.
lives. But then spring comes again. Then
Mhm.
summer comes again. It's an up and down. It's like a wave. It's like we have the high tide, we have the low tide. And when my daughter's in low tide, she doesn't hesitate to let me know about it and me be here for her. We talk about her sessions, whatever she wants to discuss with me, of course. That is totally up to her. But she is not alone anymore in her journey. In this journey, that it doesn't have to end the way it has ended for so many people. For my own cousins, I have cousins, I have uncles that they just ended it all.
Mm.
And this is why these conversations are so vital
Mm.
for people that are out there in a similar situation. You are not alone. If your church is not helpful, there's other resources. If your friends are not helpful, there's other resources.
Mm.
Strangers like me, like
Mm.
you, Robert, we are here to help you. We are here to help you because we're all capable of improving our quality of life, no matter what age we are, no matter which dark places we have been in this life. Because let me tell you something, before the age of 16, two-thirds of all children in the planet will have a traumatic experience, whether it is the loss of a loved one, being
Mm.
bullied by friends or family, or sexual assault. I went through all of these by the
Mm.
time I was 9 years old. And
Mm.
I am still here. And
Mm.
I could have gone down that rabbit hole because, yes, I went down to a cave of solitude. I was
Mm.
lost in drugs, abusing alcohol, and jumping from person to person, looking for something in the outside when all I needed to do is take a long look in the mirror and
Mm.
say, where is your life going and what are you gonna do to move on, learn the
Mm.
lesson, heal?
Mm.
Because the wounds are not our fault, but the healing is our responsibility. And
Mm.
if prescription medication is what works for you, that is fine. But don't depend only on prescription medication to help you with your journey, because it goes so much further than that. And this is when a good holistic lifestyle comes into play. How about praying? How about meditation? How about support groups? How about more physical activity in your life? How about, I mean, and there's so many options out there that can help everybody tremendously, just like it has helped me. That is for sure.
Yeah, and I feel that when you talk about holistic, it's also working in the field is we kind of define crisis situations. I'm not minimizing that, but what gets very gray is what's next.
That's
So
right.
the person is stabilized, the
Mhm.
person is on medication, the person is whatever thing is what is next. And a lot of times that is, when I think about problem solving, when I think about problems in general, it is creative in nature. We have to find them through the
Mhm.
context of us. If we overgeneralize our lives, we end up finding that we're not very satisfied per se, because
Mhm.
it like what I find as success will be very different from what maybe you find is success. So,
That's right.
being we're the only beings on this planet that can reflect, and I joke this way because I know a dog could feel bad that it's a bad dog, but he doesn't think about 3 weeks ago why he's a bad dog 3 weeks ago. He just thinks
So
about
true.
but
He's living in the moment.
we're thinking about our lives, and like you mentioned, looking at ourselves in the mirror is probably one of the hardest things to do, especially
Absolutely.
when you've gone through a lot. But when you work through it, and I want to share this quote. It's an older quote that I use. I know I kind of go around, but I do like this from Marianne Ratchmatch. She says, "Courage does not always roar. Sometimes courage is a quiet voice at the end of the day saying, 'I will try again tomorrow.'"
That's
Sometimes
right.
that's all you
Beautiful.
have to do.
Hmm.
You know, this month, this theme, I did it last year, but I just love the simpleness of one more day. Sometimes
That's
it's
right.
one more day. Sometimes it's one more hour. Sometimes it's one more minute. And, when you mentioned your daughter on the ninth floor wanting to jump, and
Hmm.
it just reminds me of the conversation I had another time with I had a guest, and he mentioned that he made it a point, especially after COVID, to just not assume people knew that they were appreciated. So he
That's
would
right.
call he would call someone, and it's funny because there's such a saturation of talent. Like, you could throw
Hmm.
a rock and people are good singers, you could throw a rock, people are good musicians, whatever. However, people don't know this, especially now. So, like, sometimes the funniest person in the group, someone who is the life of the party, I would encourage those who are listening, check on them, see how they're doing.
Yes.
Because a lot of times you think they're doing it all well, but usually, a person that comes up to mind is Robin Williams,
That's
obviously.
right. Hmm.
So the life of the party, people who think that they seem to be all together, I do
Hmm.
find that if we're just kind, I have this thing about nice. Nice is, I think, is what told to us when we were kids, but it's not really well defined. And sometimes it brings us to the ability to think that being nice is to avoid disappointing others. But sometimes, conflict is inevitable.
That's
But
right.
being kind doesn't really ask for anything. It's just like, I'm just being kind because I want to be kind to this individual.
Hmm.
It doesn't need something to be reciprocated.
Hmm.
You mentioned, especially, there's no avoiding. There has been a shift since 2020, and it's not about the actual illness, but the impact it had to ourselves and how we
Hmm.
communicate, and the loneliness. And I could be alone, I'll be fine, but I also could be lonely and with a lot of people and not be
That's
fine.
right. Oh my God. Isn't that the absolute truth? And just like you said, people that are the life of the party, people that you may think that they have it all together, they have it all down to the T, all is beautiful, all is perfect. Watch out, because there's no such thing as perfection. There's no such thing as like, oh my God, this is so good to be true.
Mm,
And that is when a real problem can happen, because a lot of people try to over deliver themselves,
mhm,
pretending that life is always peaches and cream, when we have our ups and downs. We have our moments of anger. We have our moments of frustration, sadness, grief, loss. And a lot of people don't want to show that vulnerability, because vulnerability maybe equals weakness, which is absolutely not true. Vulnerability is power. You're showing your true self, who you really are, in the good, in the bad, in the sad, and the ugly. To me, vulnerability is authenticity. And the more authentic we are, the better we will be. Look at Robin Williams, such a phenomenal actor, comedian, and his dark side was overshadowed
mhm,
all the happiness that he delivered to the world. And he wanted to, he showed a facade of his undeniable talent, because I am still a huge fan of him
mm,
for the rest of my life.
mm.
But his undeniable talent, definitely he over delivered on his talent, but definitely didn't take care of the root of his problem, which was mental illness. And this is when you are like, wow. And that's why it was such a shocker for so many. It's like, wow, this guy was unbelievable in everything he did, until
Mhm.
the walls closed in on him, and we know the rest that happened to
Yeah,
him,
and
unfortunately.
I think that's just for me, obviously not to, whenever I think of suicide, and you experience family members who completed suicide, and I've experienced friends who completed. And one thing that what is reminded is that it, these examples and these lessons, I'm hoping that will be just like a reminder, because we're really bad at remembering. We have all these different months and awareness preventions because we're
True.
bad rememberers. And at the very least, if anything, if you get from this portion, is that um, you're worth the help. Get the help. you know
Absolutely.
so last, it was 2023, I was reading, U.S. Surgeon General wrote an 82-page article, Our Epidemic, Loneliness and Isolation. And I was snipping some things in the very beginning, not the actual article itself, but if you have time, you want to read it, it's kind of interesting. I was reading it the other day, but he does mention loneliness and isolation represents a profound threat to our health and well-being. It's interesting that now, and I just feel that on of how he wrote it, it wasn't just when we think of loneliness, we're like, well, it's sometimes not. It doesn't seem like a choice. If someone is struggling with loneliness, just go. It's more ambiguous, and like that's why it
Hmm.
gets more difficult. He continues and says, and we can ensure our country and the world are better poised. So he makes a big push and makes it clear that this is very vital for us to kind of really
Hmm.
address poise every to than ever to take on the challenge that is laid ahead. Our future, and he says it this way, which kind of spoke to me. Our future depends on what we do today. Our
Hmm.
future depends on how we connect today. Or we have family gatherings. We're starting to see them. Everyone still has their phone. Even myself, a lot of times you have to put it down. It's like, oh, we haven't seen these people for 10 years. We are disconnected. I feel the
Yes.
conversations are unfortunately lacking a lot of substance.
Hmm.
And eh, I do feel it has impacted this aspect when it comes to
Hmm.
how we view loneliness, how we view ourselves, how we view connections. Because a lot of times communication is a lot of times assumed to happen, but there's so much failures and breakdowns in communication.
Yeah.
But even though it is a struggle, and I would say this, even though it is hard, the fact that it is hard and the fact that how he presents it, it is important to address in some sort of way. I
Hmm.
don't, and I say this because when we think about mental health, and a lot of the only bridge that kind of gets someone the help they need is actually revolve some sort of communication, some
Hmm.
sort of way to communicate this. If you visually see someone who is struggling, maybe they're doing things like, one thing that is interesting that people forget is someone start giving away or being very happy all of a sudden when they're not happy before. They've been
Yeah.
really sad for a longest time, and all of a sudden they're like, wow, they're really at peace. That's a big red flag, because the person may be already decided the date, the time when they're
Oh,
supposed.
yeah.
So
Hmm.
if they're giving away part of their property that they always love, like a lot of times if we take the context out of the individual, yeah, we could generalize and say, oh, that's very nice. But if we're being
Yeah.
intentional about who these people are, what are their names, why does this matter, is because the people who are impacted, the people who are left, people who are still working on trying to find a way through this.
Right.
Any thoughts? I'm sorry to kind of.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I'm listening attentively because it's very true what you say, Robert. The people that are normally into themselves, that they are, let's say, not really isolated, but more on the I am conservative, I'm into myself, I mind my own business, and all of the sudden
Mhm.
I'm giving this away and I'm giving that away and I'm so happy and I'm so happy. It's a very big red flag. It's like, okay, you are up to something, you're planning on something, and you have this level of happiness because you're gonna end it. And
Mhm.
it happens a lot of times, and these are the red flags that a lot of us do ignore. That is
Mhm.
for sure, because I had a cousin of mine. He was this wonderful human being, but he was addicted to drugs, and he was in and out of rehab, and he will get out of rehab, feel better for a year, then go back to rehab. It was like an on and off, in and out. And I have worked with, and I still work in two rehab centers for drug addiction and alcohol abuse. And most of the time, the rooting of the addiction is not the addiction per se, is untreated childhood trauma. Some
Mhm.
trauma from somewhere, some very, very catastrophic moment that people lived in their lives, and it went untreated, it went unobserved, it wasn't paid attention to, it wasn't, this person didn't have any support. And all I need to do, I'm a licensed massage therapist, and I help them in a holistic way to feel better. And all I do is, so how are you doing today? And they say it all, because if there's something that I have found out about rehab centers, is that nobody has anything to hide anymore. They
Mhm.
hit rock bottom in such a way that there's nothing to hide anymore, and they all start saying it out loud, where they come from, what happened, if they were sexually abused repeatedly by a parent, if they were robbed of their innocence. Most of the time, it really happens that way, that they're robbed of their innocence. They suffer lack of a significance, lack of security, lack of safety, like I did in my younger years. I lacked of significance in my life because I felt abandoned and neglected.
Mhm.
And when my father passed away, and it led me to a lot of self-destruction and a lot of self-sabotage, and this is what led me to abuse alcohol and drugs for many, many years, until I met this man. He was an addict himself, and I had two kids with him, and everything changed.
Mhm.
I found a new reason to keep alive. I
Mhm.
could have easily been this another statistic of, oh, she OD'd and she died because she was a sad person or she was lost. Yes, I was very lost, and this is what happens to people from all ages, all
Mhm.
social statures. It doesn't matter. Especially all ages. I have taken care of people that are youngsters, 18-year-olds, all the way to people in their 70s that they have full families,
Mhm.
grandchildren, and everything, and they're still struggling with abuse, some kind of abuse, because they are trying to sugarcoat and throw that trauma underneath the rug and underneath the rug by the way of numbing the pain with a
Mhm.
temporary fix, when the
Mhm.
rooting is so much deeper than that. And it's like, just like you say previously, we tend to forget, and we forget very quickly where
Mhm.
we have been. And sometimes this is why people just keep on falling off the wagon over and over and
Mhm.
over, because they forget the pain of when they were in detox, and just to fall again into being intoxicated again. I have seen people, unfortunately, that they just lost their lives over it. I have seen people that this is what, the 14th time that they're
Mhm.
back to rehab. It's like everything and anything you can imagine in the book I have seen. I have worked on them, and this is the most important job as a massage therapist that I ever done in my 20-year career as a massage therapist, because it is much more profound than just putting someone on a table. How are you feeling today? Let me help you get better. I'll see you next time. It goes much further than that, because where they are,
Mhm.
I used to be,
Mhm.
and we connect. And
Mhm.
if any words of hope that I can give them in that moment, it serves them for something, my job is done for that day.
Mhm.
Definitely. I mean, everything else is up to them, of course. But if is there any words of love,
Mhm.
compassion, empathy that I
Mhm.
can give them and tell them, hey, I was really down that road myself, and they will be like, What? But you seem so put together. Exactly.
Mm,
Exactly. I seem so put together because I am put together now, but
mm,
before that just wasn't the case. And this is when, yes, we're all capable of change. We're
mm,
all capable of changing the narrative. We're all capable of improving ourselves. We're all capable of picking up those pieces, making them and use them as lessons to maybe help others, like I am right now, right
mm.
here, right now, helping others improve their quality of life. No matter what age we are, we're all capable of change. We're all capable of restarting that button, and we all deserve it. That is the most important part.
Yeah, and it's that internal validation that does really kind of help when you could get there. It's not easy. Obviously,
Mhm.
we do like to get validated outside. You can't just say, I'm awesome if you just haven't really resolved or even dealt with what you're going through.
Right.
But at the same time, I do like that. When it comes to you're connecting with these, you're building rapport real quickly. And another thing that I do find very helpful is, like you mentioned before, feeling heard. A lot of times people think they have to say something, and a lot of times they don't. And
Hmm.
I say this why? Because, and another thing is decisions. One thing that gets taken away, or not really taken away, but seems to be taken away when you have a mental illness, maybe substance use issues, that your decision matters less. Who you are, you made too many mistakes. Um, I feel when we believe these kind of negative thoughts, it does kind of hamper or become that barrier to asking. When I ask the question, are you allowed to get better, and they don't know what I mean by that. The idea is that a lot of these things, if nothing's going to change, if nothing's going to change.
Hmm.
Sometimes what you have to kind of think is be open to the idea that you haven't done before. That's rationally that what it leads to.
So
But
true.
so I want to segue to getting a lot of times when I have new guests or returning guests, I give them an opportunity to share a little bit about themselves, what brought them to here, and anything else you want to share. The floor is yours. Thank you for so much, Blanca, for coming on.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much, Robert, for having me here today. All I can say to the listeners is don't let your past define your future. Don't let
Mm,
what happened to you define the rest of your life. There's this inspirational speaker. I listen to a lot of inspirational speakers,
mm,
transformative speakers that really they all have helped me tremendously in my journey to recovery myself. And this is a lifelong journey. The healing process never ends. This is for the rest of my life. And I'm open to it because it makes me feel better. It makes me feel useful. It makes me feel like I can help others heal with my words and where I have been in this life. And there's this inspirational speaker called Jim Rohn that he says, life doesn't get better by chance, it
mm,
gets better by change.
mm,
From the moment of birth, no, from the moment of conception to the moment of our passing, we are changing. In this human experience, change is like going to the bathroom or sleeping. We don't go without change. We are beings of change all throughout. And we are capable of changing the narrative of our lives. And don't do it alone. Don't try to do it alone. There is support out there. Even when you feel like you're not heard, that you're not supported, like this 8-year old girl that she lost her father violently. Her father was her person, her guy, her everything, and she lost him, and she didn't know how to deal with the loss, with the grief. She felt alone. She felt like she felt like she didn't matter. But you know what? After years of solitude and not understanding why that silence will be so long and so deep, when this girl started speaking out,
mm,
transformation came. When this girl went to counseling, transformation happened. When this girl decided to take a long, slow look at that mirror and say, "You got this." That is when total transformation happened into the woman that she is today. And this wasn't so long ago. This has been a process of over 20 years of this healing journey that it doesn't end. There's always something that can trigger me because of all the abuse. There's always something that can take me back to a difficult memory, but it's a memory. It's not defining who I am anymore. And this is why I'm here openly talking to as many people as possible and to let them know you're not alone. I am here to support you. Robert is here to support you. So, yes, take a chance on yourself. You are worth it. Thank you so
Mm.
much, Robert, for having me.
No worries. I want to, as we go to just some of our final thoughts, I do appreciate you sharing that inspirational. A lot. What it's interesting when we think about some of the more complex things in our lives. When I was in math and trig, I didn't really like it so much, but I learned to do okay with it. This concept of derivatives. Derivatives is like a huge equation, bringing it down to the simplest form. And the reason I say this is a lot of times the biggest concepts are the most simplest ones. A lot of times our emotions can be complex, but I can feel left out, and that could be heavy. I could feel unappreciated, and that could lead to more negative thoughts in our minds.
Mhm.
Another thing is that it's the permanence that gets a little bit more dangerous and can
Mhm.
get dangerous. So a breakup, yeah, you feel awful if you especially a young love, the breakup. The
Right.
thing is, it's a loss
Mhm.
because you have all those memories, all those aspirations. A job, that could be also, but the thing about it is when we remember that that is not permanent, it will change,
Exactly.
like you said. But another way of, when you were mentioning change, there's also another way, because there's always this, only if I get that. So what I like to tell people is our lives are always unfinished. It's
Mhm.
interesting to say it that way, but it allows us the latitude to grow. Because if it's always just, oh, this little space, there's this Chinese proverb I used before. It says, a bird does not sing because it has answers. It sings because it has a song.
Oh,
I
that's
like
beautiful.
music. It's understand we all have a song, right? It doesn't mean that we're always going to have answers. It also gives us the ability to be a bird, to sing
Mhm.
in that
Exactly.
regard. So, a lot of times we think that we're only useful if we have the answers. A lot of times these conversations are multiple ones.
Mhm.
A lot of times a medication, if you have experienced mental health medication, it doesn't always work the first time. It doesn't
Mhm.
work the fifth time. So the whole thing is being, understanding, and that this will eventually get where you need to get. And it's not that I'm saying that, oh, that's a guarantee. I'm saying that because you're gonna, as we learn more and as we grow and we look at the mirror a little bit more, we get to understand a little bit about ourselves. When we think about heart, like bad emotions, we would say bad emotions. Those emotions give us an opportunity, an insight. If I'm angry or disproportional, I can ask myself, why was I disproportionately angry at this person? And maybe an indicator that there's something wrong that I need to help. The only thing that I think the worst problems are the ones we don't recognize.
That's
So
right.
if you recognize that something's wrong, that's, you're getting there. There's an Australian proverb that says, "None are so deaf are those who would not hear." When we think
Mhm.
about mental health, those who are saying, "Oh, it doesn't happen to me," or "doesn't touch my family," the whole thing is, all it takes is a person, a family member, or anything for it to be important. So when we're thinking about things we don't understand, I would encourage those to be kind. Just because you don't have, think about how you would like to be treated. I'm a church leader, so in the past, so I remember this. Everyone kind of knows about the was the Good Samaritan. A lot of the health is built on that ideal. But the real question that started that whole story was, who is my neighbor? We
Mm-hmm.
think about it, that is what sparked it. So when we think about our neighbor, is it just the people that we get along with? Is it the people that are close to us? Or is it just the people we understand? Because I know for me, I'm not going to understand everything out there, but I can also be kind
So
about it.
true.
When we think, we think about mental health, think
So
about
true. So true. So many stories, so many different people, so many different situations. And no, you're not gonna understand and totally comprehend like what everybody is saying, because that is just not real. But
Mm-mm,
just be present. Just be there
exactly.
to lend a helping hand. And it's not to invade people with toxic positivity. It's like, oh, it'll pass, don't you worry, it'll pass, so just smile,
Mm,
be positive. It's like, no, it's not about that. How about just saying, I am here for you no matter what. I am here
yeah.
for you. Is there anything I can do for you? And a lot of people are so happy just by hearing that, or just by you sitting down,
Mm,
holding a hand, and this person just talk. Because
mm,
most of the time, I see many patients, I massage many patients in the rehab centers in a weekly basis. And all I do is, while I'm massaging them, I ask them, how are you feeling?
mm.
And they start talking, and all they want to do is that, to be heard, because I'm sure that they haven't been heard in a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, as we come to our the final thoughts. Any final thoughts as we wrap up? It's been a pleasure to have you, Blanca, on the podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Robert. I would love to give to the listeners a complimentary session for holistic life coaching. I believe that with the proper help and the proper guidance, people can get to many places in life and to many good changes, and start rewiring their brains into new things that can help them with their journey, because we are all capable of these things. We're all capable of picking up the pieces of our broken hearts and mend them and making them into something better. And I'm a true believer of prayer.
Mm,
I love prayer. I love meditation. I love having quiet time. It really helps me through my darkest times in my life, when there is no hope out there, when your walls are closing in. Pray.
mm.
There's always angels out there that will protect you, that they will take care of you. But all you need to do is reach out. So please get a hold of me. My website is www.woundedhealer.us. I am here for you. So yes, do not hesitate. I'll give you a complimentary session for free, and there's no timeline. It can be 1 hour, it can be 2 hours. Who cares? I'm here for you. Okay. So yes, please don't do it alone.
And those who are listening, all that information will be in the notes. So just find out more. Just click away. And I just want to share, final thoughts. What spoke to me is just making yourself. The old saying, you can't take care of anyone if you can't you can't be supportive if you're not taking care of yourself. But that
Mhm.
also means, let us start thinking about not just how well I'm doing, how well my family is doing. Think about creating an environment that accountability is only a bad word when you're around negative people.
Mhm.
Accountability is not a bad word when you're around supportive people. You don't have to
Right.
understand people to be supportive. You just have to be understanding that there is definitely a lot of things that we don't understand. But kindness, human decency, understanding that even though you may have some biases, and being honest about that, you can still be kind to them and learn. And then as we learn, as we grow, as we are unfinished in our lives, we may learn more insight from the people we are condemning. So I will encourage you to be kinder because you may learn something more about yourself. If you're the smartest person in the room, I used to say, you may need to go to another room. Don't just be around people that think like you. Be around people that don't think like you. Because
Mhm.
at the end of the day, it's the communities that are really being affected right now. If we're allowed to build those positive communities, we may give a person who's maybe thinking about killing themselves or ending their lives a
Mm,
reason to ask for help. So let's try to make those communities together. Thank you so much, Blanca, again for coming on and sharing your
thank you.
insight.
Thank you so
Leave it.
much.
Revive Ministries FL.com is our website. Leaving with the last quote from Roy McAvoy. He says, "When defining moments comes along, you can only do two things: define the moment, or let the moment define you."
Amen. Amen.